The loading docks of Starport Nexus 7 smelled like fuel and rust. Dae-Hyun pulled another cargo crate across the metal floor, sweat dripping down his face. The station was always too hot in the loading areas. The air recyclers never worked right in the human sections. Around him, dozens of species moved back and forth. The tall Vrelians with their gray skin and cold eyes. The four-armed Tok'ra who could lift twice what any human could. The floating Fanuri who never touched the ground. Everyone had a job. Everyone kept moving. Dae-Hyun had been working these docks for 3 years now. The pay was bad. The hours were long. But it was work. And work meant survival out here on the edge of civilized space. Humans didn't have many options in the galaxy. Most species saw them as weak. Too emotional, too soft. Good enough for grunt work, nothing more. He was pulling his fourth crate of the morning when he saw it. Something small and fast, moving between the cargo containers. At first he thought it was one of the station's cleaning drones. Then it moved again and he realized it was alive. It was tiny, no bigger than a cat. It had scales that might have been beautiful once, but now they were dull and covered in grime. Large eyes, too large for its small face, darted around nervously. It was looking for something. Food. The creature spotted a piece of rotted fruit that had fallen from a crate. It didn't walk to it. It scrambled low to the ground like it was afraid someone would see. Like it expected to be hit. When it reached the fruit, it shoved the food into its mouth with both small hands, eating so fast it almost choked. Dae-Hyun stopped walking. He watched as the creature finished the fruit and immediately started searching for more. Its movements were desperate, frantic. Get out of the way. A Vrelian overseer stormed past, nearly stepping on the small creature. The little being squeaked and pressed itself against the wall. The Vrelian didn't even look down. To him it wasn't there. It was nothing. Hey look, one of the Tok'ra workers laughed. The scrap eater is back. Another worker, a Fanuri, tossed a piece of garbage toward the creature. Here, vermin, breakfast. The small being flinched at the thrown garbage, but then scrambled toward it. It picked through the trash, looking for anything edible. The workers laughed and went back to their jobs. Dae-Hyun felt something twist in his chest. Anger. Disgust. Not at the creature, but at the workers. At himself for just standing there, he moved closer slowly. The creature looked up at him with those enormous eyes. Fear. Pure fear. It started to back away. Wait. Dae-Hyun said softly. I'm not going to hurt you. The creature didn't understand his words. Or maybe it did, but didn't believe them. It kept backing away until it hit the wall behind it. Trapped, Dae-Hyun could see it better now. The scales were iridescent under the grime, catching the light in shades of blue and purple. It had 3 fingers on each hand. Its face was almost humanoid, but the eyes were larger and had a slight glow to them. There was intelligence there. This wasn't some animal. This was a person. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his lunch. A sandwich wrapped in brown paper. He unwrapped it slowly, making no sudden movements. The creature watched every motion. Then Dae-Hyun did something different from everyone else. He didn't toss the food like garbage. He knelt down, getting to the creature's level. He placed the sandwich on the ground gently like it was an offering, not trash. Then he backed away several steps. The creature stared at the sandwich. Then at him. Then back at the sandwich. It didn't move for a long moment. Dae-Hyun could see the conflict in its eyes. Hunger fighting against fear. Need fighting against distrust. Finally, hunger won. The creature crept forward, grabbed the sandwich, and retreated to its corner. It ate quickly, but not frantically like before. It kept looking at Dae-Hyun, as if expecting him to attack or take the food back. He didn't. He just watched. When the creature finished eating, it sat there for a moment, still staring at him. Then it made a sound. A small chirp like a question. You're welcome, Dae-Hyun said quietly. Are you seriously wasting food on that thing? Taemin, another human worker, walked up beside him. Dae-Hyun, come on. It's just one of those Ilari remnants. They're all over the station. Nobody cares about them. Ilari? Dae-Hyun asked, still watching the small creature. Yeah, used to be some kind of fancy species before the Vrelians crushed them. Now they're scattered everywhere. This station probably has a dozen of them hiding in the walls. They eat scraps and stay out of sight. It's not our problem. But it felt like a problem to Dae-Hyun. It felt like a very big problem that everyone could see a person eating trash and just walk by. That everyone could see those intelligent eyes and call it vermin. She's scared, Dae-Hyun said. It's an it, not a she. Taemin corrected. And yeah, it's scared. Probably been living like that for months, maybe years. That's just how things are out here. We can't save everyone, Dae-hyun. We can barely save ourselves. Taemin walked away to get back to work. The shift supervisor was already yelling about wasted time. Dae-hyun took one last look at the small creature. She was still sitting in her corner, watching him. He noticed something else now. She wasn't just dirty. There were scars on her scales. Old injuries. She had been living like this for a long time. "I'll see you tomorrow," he said quietly, knowing she probably didn't understand. But her eyes followed him as he walked away. For the rest of the day, Dae-hyun couldn't stop thinking about those eyes, about the way she had scrambled for food like a beaten dog, about the way everyone just stepped around her like she was part of the floor. That night, in his small quarters, Dae-hyun searched the station's database for information about the Ilari. What he found made his anger grow even stronger. The Ilari had been scholars, artists, philosophers. Their children were raised as living libraries, taught to memorize thousands of stories and historical records. They were considered precious, sacred. Every child was treated like royalty because they carried the memories of their entire civilization. Then the Vrelians had come. The Ilari homeworlds were conquered. The species was scattered. Their children, once treated as treasures, became refugees. Unwanted, forgotten. The small creature he'd seen today eating garbage behind the cargo containers? In another time, another place, she would have been a princess. She would have been cherished and protected. She would have been taught and celebrated. Instead, she was eating rot and hiding from boots. Dae-hyun made a decision that night. He didn't know exactly what he was going to do yet. But he knew he wasn't going to walk by anymore. He wasn't going to pretend she was invisible. Tomorrow he would bring her more food, and he would treat her like what she really was, a person who deserved better. The next morning, Dae-hyun packed 2 lunches. His co-workers noticed but didn't say anything. They probably thought he was just extra hungry. He went to the loading docks early before the shift officially started. The small Ilari girl was already there, searching through yesterday's garbage near the cargo containers. She moved quickly, nervously, always watching for danger. Dae-hyun approached slowly. She saw him immediately and froze. Her body tensed, ready to run. "Good morning," he said softly. "I brought you something." He knelt down again, the same way he had yesterday. He unwrapped a sandwich and placed it on the ground, not thrown like trash, but set down gently. With respect, the girl didn't move at first. She watched him with those huge, glowing eyes, trying to understand why this tall human kept doing this strange thing, why he didn't kick her or ignore her. Dae-hyun backed away and sat down on a nearby crate. He opened his own food and started eating, acting like everything was normal. Like sharing breakfast with a tiny alien girl was just part of his morning routine. After a long moment, the girl crept forward. She grabbed the sandwich and retreated, but not as far as yesterday. She ate slower this time, less desperate. She kept looking at him while she ate. When she finished, she made that chirping sound again. Dae-hyun smiled. "You're welcome." This became their new routine. Every morning before shift, Dae-hyun would bring food. Every morning the girl would be there waiting. Slowly, she started trusting him more. She didn't run as far when he approached. She ate in front of him instead of hiding. On the 4th day, he tried something new. "My name is Dae-hyun," he said, pointing to himself. "Dae-hyun." The girl tilted her head, watching his hand. "Learning," he pointed to her. "What's your name?" She didn't answer. Maybe she didn't understand. Maybe she had forgotten how to talk. He didn't push. He just kept bringing food and talking softly to her each morning. Other workers started noticing. Most ignored it. A few made jokes. "Dae-hyun's got a new pet," they would laugh. One Vrelian supervisor told him to stop wasting time with vermin and get to work. Taemin pulled him aside one afternoon. "I'm saying this as your friend. You need to stop. Getting attached to unregistered aliens is dangerous. If security notices, they could fine you. Or worse, they could take her and dispose of her. Just leave it alone." But Dae-hyun couldn't leave it alone. Every time he saw her scrambling for scraps, every time he saw the scars on her scales, every time he saw other workers kick garbage toward her for fun, something burned in his chest. This was wrong. Everything about this was wrong. He started researching more about the Ilari in the station database. He read everything he could find. The Ilari had been a peaceful species. They didn't believe in violence. Their whole culture was built around memory and art and learning. They had been easy targets when the Vrelians wanted their worlds. Ilari children were raised communally. The whole society protected them. They were taught songs that held historical records, stories that went back thousands of years. Each child was a living book, precious beyond measure. This girl, eating trash behind cargo containers, was supposed to be in school. She was supposed to be surrounded by teachers and friends. She was supposed to be learning her people's songs and stories, becoming a keeper of memory. Instead, she was alone, starving, treated like an animal. On the 7th day, something changed. Dae-hyun arrived at their usual spot, but the girl wasn't there. He looked around, worried. Had security finally caught her? Had she been hurt? Then he heard it. A small pain sound coming from behind a large cargo container. He found her curled up in a corner, shaking. Her scales looked even more dull than usual, and she was breathing fast. When she saw him, she tried to scurry away but collapsed. Dae-hyun's heart stopped. She was injured. There was a fresh wound on her side where a cargo drone had clipped her. The area around the wound was starting to turn a dark purple color. Infection. He looked around quickly. The docks were still mostly empty. Early shift hadn't started yet. He made a decision that could get him fired, or arrested, or both. He reached down and gently scooped the girl up. She was so light, barely any weight at all. She tried to fight, making frightened squeaking sounds, trying to bite his hand with her small teeth. "Shh," he whispered. "I know you're scared, I know. But you're really sick, please, let me help you." Maybe she understood his tone. Maybe she was just too weak to fight anymore. She stopped struggling and went limp in his hands, those huge eyes staring up at him with fear and pain. Dae-hyun hid her under his jacket and walked quickly through the station. His quarters were in the human section, several levels up from the docks. Every time he passed a security camera, his heart pounded. Every time he saw a station guard, he thought this was it. They'd catch him. They'd take her away, but he made it. He got to his small room and locked the door behind him. His quarters weren't much. One room with a bed, a small bathroom, and a food processor unit. But it was private, safe. He laid the girl down on his bed gently. She was shaking, fever burning through her small body. The wound on her side looked bad. He needed medical supplies. Dae-hyun rushed to his bathroom and grabbed his first aid kit. It was designed for humans, but maybe some of it would work for her. He had some antiseptic, bandages, fever reducers. When he came back, the girl was trying to crawl away, falling off the edge of the bed. He caught her carefully. "Please," he said, looking into her eyes. "I'm not going to hurt you. I promise, look at me. Really look at me." She stared at him. He could see the intelligence there, the fear, but also something else, a desperate hope that maybe, just maybe, this strange human was telling the truth. "You are not nothing," Dae-hyun said quietly. "I don't know if you understand me, but you need to know this. You are not trash. You are not vermin. You deserve better than what they've done to you. You deserve so much better." Maybe it was his tone. Maybe it was the gentleness in his hands. Maybe she was just too tired to be afraid anymore. The girl stopped struggling. She let him clean the wound. She flinched when the antiseptic stung, but she didn't pull away. She let him wrap bandages around her small body. She let him give her water from a small cup, drinking in tiny sips. When he was done, he made a bed for her using soft cloths and an old blanket. He placed her in it gently. She curled up immediately, exhausted. Dae-hyun sat on the floor next to the bed, watching her. "I don't know what I'm doing," he admitted to the sleeping girl. "I could lose my job. I could get in real trouble. But I couldn't just leave you there." That night, he heard her make sounds in her sleep, little whimpers and cries. Nightmares. And then so quietly he almost missed it. He heard a word. She was mumbling in her sleep a name she was calling out for. "Lire, Lire." Dae-hyun leaned closer. Was she calling for someone? Or was that her name? "Lire," he whispered. In her sleep, the girl's shaking calmed a little. Like hearing the name comforted her, even unconsciously. "Lire," Dae-hyun said again, softer. "Is that you? Is that your name?" The girl didn't wake up, but she curled up tighter in the blanket, holding it like it was precious. Dae-hyun smiled sadly. After a week of feeding her, he finally knew her name. "Okay, Lire," he said quietly. "We'll figure this out together. I promise." He didn't sleep that night. He sat on the floor next to his bed, watching over the tiny alien girl who had been eating scraps like a dog just hours ago, making sure the fever didn't get worse, making sure she kept breathing, and he started planning. Because now that she was here, now that he had crossed this line, there was no going back. Leary wasn't going back to the docks. She wasn't going back to eating garbage and sleeping in vents. She wasn't going back to being invisible. Daehyun didn't know how yet, but he was going to give her a better life, even if it cost him everything. 3 days passed. Leary's fever broke on the second night. By the third day, she was sitting up in the makeshift bed Daehyun had created for her. She still looked weak, but her scales were starting to show a bit more color. The dull gray was slowly turning back to blue and purple. Daehyun had called in sick to work. It wasn't entirely a lie. He felt sick every time he thought about sending Leary back to the docks, back to eating trash and hiding from Boots. He couldn't do it. But staying in his quarters forever wasn't a solution either. He needed a plan. He started by trying to talk to her. Leary didn't speak at first. She just watched him with those big eyes, studying his every move. But Daehyun kept talking anyway. He told her about his day, about the station, about Earth, the human home world that he missed sometimes. Earth has these things called dogs, he explained while preparing food. They're animals, but we treat them like family. We love them. Some people love their dogs more than they love other humans, honestly. Leary tilted her head, listening. But you're not a dog, Daehyun continued. You're a person. And where I come from, people don't eat garbage. People don't sleep in walls. People get to have names and homes and dignity. He brought her a plate of food. Not scraps or leftovers. Real food that he'd gotten from the station market, spending extra credits on items that his research said were safe for Ilari biology. Fruits and vegetables and grain-based items. Ilari were herbivores, he had learned. Leary stared at the plate like she didn't believe it was real. Then she looked up at him, those eyes asking a silent question. It's yours, Daehyun said. All of it. You don't have to rush. Nobody's going to take it away. She ate slowly this time, carefully, like she was remembering how to eat like a person instead of a starving animal. While she ate, Daehyun worked on improving her space. He couldn't give her much in his tiny quarters, but he could give her something. He took the shelf unit next to his bed and cleared it out. He lined it with soft cloths and the blanket. He found a small lamp and placed it inside so she could have her own light. When Leary finished eating, she watched him work with curiosity. This is your space, Daehyun explained. Your own spot. Nobody else's. You can go in there when you want privacy or when you want to feel safe. Leary chirped softly. It sounded almost like a question. Go ahead, Daehyun said, gesturing to the shelf. Try it out. She climbed down from the bed carefully, still favoring her injured side. She approached the shelf slowly, then climbed inside. She turned around several times like a cat making a nest, then curled up in the soft fabric. For the first time since Daehyun had met her, Leary looked comfortable. She looked safe. That night he heard her speak for the first time. Daehyun. He was sitting at his small desk, reading more about Ilari culture on his tablet. He turned around quickly. Leary was peeking out from her shelf, looking at him. Yes, he said, trying to keep his voice calm even though his heart was racing. She had said his name. She could talk. Why? Leary's voice was small and rough, like she hadn't used it in a very long time. But it was clear. She was speaking Galactic Standard, the common language of the station. Why what? Daehyun asked gently. Why help? She climbed out of her shelf and sat on the edge, her small legs dangling. Everyone else? Not help, kick, laugh, throw trash. Why you different? Daehyun thought about his answer carefully. Because you're a person, Leary, and people deserve to be treated with kindness. That's what I was taught. Most species not think Ilari people anymore, Leary said quietly. Vrelians say we nothing, just remnants, pieces left over. Not important? The Vrelians are wrong, Daehyun said firmly. You are important. You have a name. You have thoughts and feelings. You remember things. That makes you a person. That makes you important. Leary was quiet for a long time. Then she said, I remember. From before, when I smaller than now. I remember family. I remember home. We had singing circles. Everyone sit together. Children in middle. We learned songs. Old songs. Important songs. Stories from before time. Memory songs. Daehyun said, remembering what he had read. Your people use songs to remember your history? Yes. Lee Ray's eyes brightened. You know this? I've been reading about Ilari culture, Daehyun admitted. I wanted to understand. I wanted to know how to help you better. Lee Ray stared at him like he had said something impossible. You learn about Ilari? For me? Of course. How else would I know what kind of food you need? Or what colors Ilari like? I read that your people prefer cool colors. Blues and purples and greens. That's why I got that blue blanket for you. Lee Ray looked down at her blue blanket, then back at Daehyun. Her eyes were shining now, almost glowing brighter. No one tried to understand before, she whispered. Long time. Many months. Maybe year. Just survive. Eat what find. Hide when workers come. Sleep when tired. Wake when scared. Every day same. Every day alone. Daehyun felt that familiar anger burning in his chest again. You're not alone anymore. And you're not going back to that. I don't know how yet, but we're going to figure something out. Over the next few days, Lee Ray started talking more. Her voice got stronger. She told Daehyun about her past in fragments, pieces of memory that hurt too much to say all at once. She had been with her family on a transport ship. Raiders attacked. Vrelian raiders looking for Ilari to sell as servants or worse. Her family hid her in a cargo container. She heard screaming, heard her mother calling her name. Then nothing. The container was loaded onto another ship. Then another. She lost track of how many times she was moved. Eventually, she ended up on Starport Nexus 7. She escaped from the container and hid in the ventilation system. That was 8 months ago. 8 months of living like an animal. 8 months of scraps and fear and cold metal walls. Daehyun listened to every word. He didn't interrupt. He didn't tell her it would be okay. He just listened. When she finished, Lee Ray looked exhausted. I try to remember songs. Songs from home. But some part, forget. Gone. And if I forget, no one else remember. I only one here. Maybe only one left anywhere. You won't forget, Daehyun promised. We'll help you remember. And we'll find out if there are more Ilari out there. You're not the last one. I refuse to believe that, Lee Ray smiled. It was a small, sad smile, but it was there. The first smile Daehyun had seen from her. A few days later, Taemin knocked on Daehyun's door. Hey man, are you actually sick or are you avoiding work? Because the supervisor is getting suspicious. Daehyun opened the door just a crack. I'm dealing with something. I'll be back soon. Taemin tried to look past him into the room. Are you okay? You sound weird. Before Daehyun could answer, Lee Ray appeared behind him, peeking around his leg to see who was at the door. Taemin's eyes went wide. Oh no, 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 no. Daehyun, tell me you didn't. I can explain. You brought it home? Are you insane? If security finds out, they'll... Her name is Lee Ray, Daehyun interrupted firmly. Not it. And she's not going back to the docks. Taemin looked from Daehyun to Lee Ray and back again. He ran a hand through his hair, stressed. This is crazy. This is the craziest thing you've ever done. I know. You could lose everything. I know. They could deport you, send you back to Earth. I know, Daehyun said louder. Then softer. I know. But I couldn't leave her there, Taemin. I couldn't keep watching her eat garbage and pretend it was fine. Could you? Taemin looked at Lee Ray again. She was watching him nervously, ready to run if he made any threatening moves. She looked so small, so fragile. Taemin sighed deeply. You're going to need help. This isn't something you can do alone. I'm not asking you to... I know you're not asking. I'm offering. But we need to be smart about this. Really smart. First thing, you need to get her registered somehow. Get her legal status on the station. How? The Ilari don't have a government anymore. There's no one to petition for her. I don't know yet, but there's got to be a way. Taemin stepped into the room and knelt down to Lee Ray's level. Hey Lee Ray, I'm Taemin. I'm Daehyun's friend. I'm going to help too, okay? Lee Ray looked at Daehyun. He nodded encouragingly. She looked back at Taemin and chirped softly. Taemin smiled. Okay, we'll figure this out. But Daehyun, you need to come back to work tomorrow. Act normal. If people start asking questions, this all falls apart. Daehyun knew he was right. What about Lee Ray? I can't leave her alone all day. I'll come check on her during breaks, Taemin offered. And we need to contact Bora. She works in station administration. If anyone knows the legal loopholes, it's her. It wasn't a perfect plan, but it was something. A start. That night after Taimin left, Dae-hyun found something in the station's data market. An old Alari cultural database that someone was selling. It cost him a month's salary. He didn't hesitate. He bought it immediately. When it downloaded, he found what he was looking for. Cultural traditions, greetings, songs. And there, in the section about children, he found it. The morning greeting that Ilari families used to say to their children every single day. A ritual phrase that meant everything to their culture. The next morning, before he left for work, Dae-hyun knelt down next to Lire's shelf. He had practiced the pronunciation all night using the audio files in the database. "Lire," he said softly. She poked her head out, curious. In careful, slightly clumsy Ilari, he spoke the traditional greeting. "You are seen. You are valued. You are remembered." Lire's eyes went wide. Then they filled with Bora came to visit 3 days later. She was a human woman in her 30s who worked in the station's administrative offices. She had access to records and regulations that most workers never saw. If anyone could find a legal way to protect Lire, it was her. She sat on Dae-hyun's floor with a tablet, reading through pages of galactic law while Lire watched nervously from her shelf. "This is complicated," Bora said after 20 minutes of silence. "Really complicated. The Ilari don't have government representation anymore. No embassy, no diplomatic status. Legally, that puts Lire in a gray area." "What does that mean?" Dae-hyun asked. "It means she's not protected by standard refugee laws because there's no government to claim her as a citizen. But it also means nobody can prove ownership of her. She's in between, existing in a legal blind spot. Can we use that somehow?" Bora tapped her stylus against her chin. "Maybe. If we can get her registered as a station resident under human sponsorship. It's usually used for dependents like children of workers, but the law doesn't specifically say the dependent has to be human. So I could register her as my dependent? It's risky. If the Vrelian administrators notice and challenge it, they could claim you're falsifying documents. But if we're clever about the paperwork..." Bora's fingers flew across her tablet. "If we submit it during the end-of-quarter processing rush, it might slip through. They process thousands of forms during that time. One more might not get closely examined. When is the next quarter processing?" 2 weeks, Dae-hyun nodded. "Okay, we can do this. We just need to keep Lire safe and hidden for 2 more weeks. But keeping secrets on a station full of gossips and security cameras wasn't easy. Word was already spreading among the human workers that Dae-hyun was up to something. Some thought he was smuggling contraband. Others thought he was hiding from debt collectors. The truth was stranger than any of their guesses. Taemin helped cover for him at work. When supervisors asked questions, Taemin made excuses. Dae-hyun's dealing with family issues. He'll be back to normal soon. During lunch breaks, either Taemin or Bora would visit Dae-hyun's quarters to check on Lire. They brought her food, kept her company, and made sure she wasn't lonely while Dae-hyun worked. Lire slowly started trusting them too. She even started teaching Bora small phrases in Ilari. Bora was fascinated by the language and the culture. She recorded everything Lire remembered about her people, storing it in secure files. "This is incredible," Bora said one evening. "The Ilari had such a rich history. It can't be lost. Lire, you need to remember as much as you can." "I try," Lire said, "but some memories, fuzzy, far away, like dreams." "That's okay," Bora assured her. "We'll help you remember, and we'll write it all down. Your people won't be forgotten." On the 8th day, something happened that changed everything. Dae-hyun was working the docks when he noticed a Vrelian he didn't recognize. The alien was dressed better than most workers, wearing expensive clothes and jewelry. He was watching the docks carefully, studying the cargo areas where Lire used to hide. "Who's that?" Dae-hyun asked Taemin quietly. Taemin glanced over. His face went pale. "That's Krell, he's a merchant. Deals in rare goods and other things." "What kind of other things?" "Exotic servants? Rare species. If he's here, that's bad news." Dae-hyun's stomach dropped. "He's looking for Ilari, probably. Word must have gotten out that there are some on the station. Ilari children, if documented properly, can be sold for a lot of credits to collectors who want exotic servants. They're small, intelligent, and easy to control." The anger that Dae-hyun had been feeling for weeks exploded into something hotter. Rage. "He's not taking her," Dae-hyun said through gritted teeth. "He doesn't know about her," Taemin said quickly. "Nobody knows except us. She's been off the docks for over a week." He's probably looking for the others. Others? There are more Ilari on the station. At least 2 or 3 more that I've seen. They hide just like Liray did. Daehyun's mind raced. We need to find them. Before Krell does. That night, Daehyun, Taemin, and Bora had an emergency meeting in Daehyun's quarters. Liray sat between them, listening to everything. We can't save everyone, Bora said practically. We barely have a plan for Liray. Adding more Ilari children to the situation makes it exponentially more complicated. We can't just leave them, Daehyun argued. If Krell finds them, he'll sell them. They'll spend the rest of their lives as slaves. I understand that, but no. Liray's small voice cut through the argument. No, leave others. If can save, must save. Is Ilari way. We protect children. All children. Always. The 3 humans looked at the tiny alien. She was sitting up straight, her scales shimmering with determination. Please, Liray said. Help me find them. I teach them trust humans. I teach them safe. We save everyone possible. How could they say no to that? Over the next few days, they formed a plan. Liray would go back to the docks, but not alone. Daehyun would keep her hidden under his jacket. She would call out in Ilari, trying to reach the other children who were hiding. It was dangerous. If anyone saw Liray, questions would be asked. But it was the only way. The first night they tried it, nothing happened. Liray called out softly in her native language, but no one answered. The second night they heard a response. A small chirp from inside a ventilation shaft. Liray called again, speaking rapidly in Ilari. Daehyun didn't understand the words, but he understood the tone. She was telling the other child that it was safe, that the human could be trusted. Slowly, another Ilari child emerged from the vent. This one was even smaller than Liray, with green-tinted scales instead of blue. She looked terrified. Liray climbed down from Daehyun's shoulder and approached the other child. They touched foreheads, an Ilari greeting. Liray chirped and spoke softly. The other child listened, then looked up at Daehyun with wide, fearful eyes. Daehyun knelt down. Hello, I'm not going to hurt you. I promise. My name is Daehyun. What's yours? The child didn't answer. But when Liray took her hand and started leading her toward Daehyun, she didn't pull away. They found 3 more Ilari children over the next week. Each one was scared. Each one was alone. Each one had been surviving in the walls and vents, eating garbage and hiding from boots. Daehyun's quarters became a sanctuary. 4 Ilari children now called his small room home. It was crowded. It was chaotic. It was definitely breaking about a dozen station regulations. But when Daehyun came home from work to find all 4 children sitting together, teaching each other remembered songs, it felt right. It felt like what should have been happening all along. Bora was stressed. I can't register 4 Ilari children under human sponsorship without it getting noticed. 1 was already risky. 4 is impossible. Then we need to get the other humans involved, Daehyun said. We need help. That night he called a meeting of the human workers. About 20 people showed up in one of the common rooms. Daehyun stood in front of them, nervous but determined. I need to tell you something, he began. And I need your help. He told them everything. About Liray, about the other children, about Krell, about the plan to protect them. Some people shook their heads and left. Too risky, they muttered. Not our problem, but most stayed. And when Daehyun finished talking, an older human woman named Young-soo stood up. I have a daughter, she said. Her name is Hana. She's 7 years old. If someone saw her eating garbage and being treated like vermin, I would hope someone would help her. I would hope someone would see her as a person, not as a problem. She looked around the room. These Ilari children are people. They deserve the same chance as any of our children. I'll help. One by one, other humans stood up. I'll help. Me too. Count me in. By the end of the night, they had 15 humans willing to help protect the Ilari children. It wasn't much compared to the thousands of aliens on the station, but it was something. It was hope. The next day, Daehyun took Liray out of his quarters for the first time since he'd brought her home. He carried her on his shoulder openly, walking through the human sections of the station. People stared. Some pointed, but no one attacked, no one threw trash. They went to the market to buy food. The shopkeeper, a grumpy Tok'ra who had worked the station for years, looked at Liray with confusion. What is that? He asked. She is a person, Daehyun said firmly. Her name is Liray. She's my responsibility and under my protection. The Tok'ra snorted. Humans and their emotions. You're going to get yourself in trouble, boy. Maybe, but it's the right kind of trouble. As they walked through the market, something amazing happened. Lyrae sat up straighter. Her scales brightened. She looked around with curiosity instead of fear. She was seeing the station not as a place to hide, but as a place to exist. At one stall, the merchant tried to shoo Lyrae away with a broom. "Get that thing away from my goods!" Daehyun caught the broom mid-swing. His voice was cold. "You will not touch her. She is a person. She has a name. It's Lyrae. And if you ever try to hit her again, we're going to have a serious problem." The merchant backed off, grumbling. A small crowd had gathered to watch. Most looked amused or annoyed, but one alien, the security officer, stood in the doorway, a tall Vrelian with cold eyes and a scanner in his hand. Behind Daehyun, the 4 Ilari children had gone completely silent. They knew danger when they saw it. "I'm going to need to inspect your quarters," the officer said. "We've received reports of unregistered life forms residing in this sector." Daehyun's mind raced. If the officer found the children, they could be taken. Classified as unregistered aliens. Turned over to someone like Krell or worse, on what grounds? A voice said from behind the officer. Bora appeared, walking down the corridor with her administrative tablet and an air of authority. She worked in station admin, which gave her at least some standing with security. "This is a random inspection," the officer said, annoyed at the interruption. Random inspections require supervisor approval and 24-hour notice according to Station Regulation 7.3. Bora said smoothly, showing her tablet screen. "Do you have that approval?" The officer's jaw tightened. "This is a matter of station security. Then you'll need to file the proper emergency inspection request. I can help you with that paperwork. It usually takes about 3 days to process." The officer knew he was beaten. He could force his way in, but that would mean filling out even more paperwork and possibly getting in trouble with his supervisors. He glared at Daehyun one more time. 3 days, he said, "and if there's anything illegal in there, you're both going to have problems." He left. Bora waited until he was gone, then quickly stepped inside Daehyun's quarters. She closed the door behind her. "We have a problem," she said quietly. "Someone reported you. Krell, probably. He's been asking questions about missing Ilari. He must have heard rumors." Daehyun felt sick. "What do we do?" "We move up the timeline. I was going to wait for the quarter processing rush, but we can't wait anymore. We need to get these children registered tonight." "Is that possible?" "It's going to require some creative paperwork and a lot of favors." Bora was already typing on her tablet. "I'm going to register each child under a different human sponsor. Spreading it out makes it less obvious. Daehyun, you take Lyrae. Taemin can take the smallest one. Youngsu already volunteered to take one. We need one more person." "I'll do it," they all turned. A young human man stood in the doorway. His name was Hyunwoo, and he worked in the station's hydroponics bay. He was quiet, kept to himself mostly, but now he stepped forward. "I heard what's happening," Hyunwoo said. "I want to help. I'll sponsor one of the kids," Bora nodded. "Okay, that's 4 sponsors. 4 children. We can do this." She looked at the Ilari children who were watching everything with wide eyes. "We need basic information from each of you. Names, approximate age, any family information you remember." Over the next hour, they gathered what little information the children could provide. Besides Lyrae, there was Kira, the small one with green scales. Then Tal, who was slightly older with gray-blue coloring. And finally Ceres, who had deep purple scales and was the quietest of the 4. Each child had a story. Each one had lost their family. Each one had survived alone for months. The details were heartbreaking. Bora worked quickly, filling out forms and submitting them through the station's bureaucratic system. She used every loophole she knew, every trick she'd learned in 5 years of administrative work. "Done," she said finally. "The registrations are submitted. If no one challenges them in the next 72 hours, they become official. And if someone does challenge them," Daehyun asked, "then we have a fight on our hands." The next 3 days were the longest of Daehyun's life. He went to work like normal, but his mind was always on Lyrae and the other children. Were they safe? Had security come back? Had Krell found them? The human workers had created a protection network. During the day, while Daehyun and the other sponsors worked, trusted humans would watch over the children. They rotated shifts, making sure the children were never alone. Youngsu brought her daughter Hana to meet the Ilari children. At first, both groups were shy. But children have a way of connecting that adults sometimes forget. Within an hour, Hana was teaching the Ilari a human hand-clapping game. The Ilari were teaching Hana one of their memory songs. "This is what should have been happening all along," Youngsu said to Daehyun. Children playing together, learning from each other, not hiding in walls. On the second day, they had a scare. Security officers were seen in the human sector, asking questions. The humans closed ranks immediately. Nobody had seen anything. Nobody knew anything. The children were hidden away in different quarters, moved around so they couldn't be easily found. The officers left frustrated. On the third day, something wonderful happened. The Torellian elder who had shown respect to Liray in the market came to the human sector. They asked to speak with Daehyun. "I hear you protect little ones," the Torellian said. "Ilari children. This is good, honorable. My people value protection of young regardless of species." "Thank you," Daehyun said, surprised. "That means a lot. More than words," the Torellian said. "I offer support. If security troubles you, come to Torellian District. We honor sanctuary traditions. We protect the protected." It was an unexpected alliance. The Torellians were a respected species on the station. Their support carried weight. News spread. Not all species cared, but some took notice. The humans weren't alone anymore in thinking the Ilari children deserved better. On the evening of the third day, Bora arrived at Daehyun's quarters with her tablet. Her face was unreadable. "Well?" Daehyun asked, his heart pounding. Bora looked at the 4 Ilari children who were sitting together nervously. Then she smiled. "It's official. All 4 registrations were approved. Lyrae, Kira, Tal, and Saris are now registered residents of Starport Nexus 7 under human sponsorship. They're legal." The relief was overwhelming. Daehyun sat down hard on his bed. Lyrae climbed into his lap and hugged him tightly. "We're safe," she whispered. "You're safe," Daehyun confirmed. "You're officially a resident now. You have rights." But the celebration didn't last long. The next morning, Krell made his move. He filed an official complaint with the station arbitration office. He claimed that the Ilari children were unregistered aliens who should be classified as salvage or unclaimed property. He argued that the human registrations were fraudulent because the Ilari had no legal standing as a species. Bora came to Daehyun's quarters with the summons. "There's going to be a hearing. In 1 week, the arbitrator will decide whether the children's registrations are legitimate or whether they can be claimed as property." Property? Daehyun felt that familiar rage rising. "They're people, I know, but we have to prove it, legally in front of an arbitrator who probably doesn't care about our feelings or morals. Can we win?" Bora was quiet for a moment. "I don't know. The law is complicated. The Ilari lost their government protection when their homeworlds were conquered. Without that, their status as a recognized species is questionable. That's insane. That's galactic law. It's not designed to be fair. It's designed to maintain order and protect economic interests." Daehyun looked at Lyrae, who was watching the conversation with worried eyes. She understood enough to know something bad was happening. "We'll fight," Daehyun said. "Whatever it takes. We'll prove they're people who deserve protection. We'll need help," Bora said. "This isn't just a paperwork issue anymore. This is going to be a public hearing. If we're going to win, we need to show the station why these children matter." Over the next week, the human community rallied. They held meetings. They organized. They prepared. Youngsu suggested creating a school for the Ilari children. If we show they're learning, growing, participating in station life, it proves they're not just salvage. They're members of the community. The idea caught fire. Humans who had teaching experience volunteered. They created a curriculum. They taught the Ilari children reading, math, history, and language. The children absorbed everything like sponges. They were hungry for knowledge, for structure, for normal life. Within days, they could read basic galactic standard. They could do simple mathematics. They remembered and shared Ilari cultural stories that Bora carefully recorded. Taimin had another idea. "We should show the station what they're really like. Not hiding in vents, but being kids, playing, learning, living." They organized a small event in the human common area. A cultural exchange. The Ilari children performed a memory song together, their voices harmonizing beautifully. They demonstrated traditional Ilari art, creating intricate patterns with colored sand. Humans came to watch. But so did others. A few Tok'ra, some Fenuri, even some Vrelians who were curious. The children were nervous at first. But as they performed, as they shared their culture, something changed. They stood taller. Their scales brightened. They looked like what they really were, children. Precious, intelligent, beautiful children who deserved a chance. The arbitration chamber was a cold, sterile room with gray walls and bright lights. Chairs were arranged in rows facing a raised platform where the arbitrator sat. The Fenurian arbitrator, whose name was Drex, looked like he would rather be anywhere else. He shuffled papers with 2 of his 4 hands while the other 2 typed notes into his console. Krell sat on one side with his lawyer. They looked confident. Why wouldn't they? The law was on their side. At least the technical parts of the law. Daehyun sat on the other side with Bora and the 4 Ilari children. Lirai sat on his shoulder trying to look brave, but he could feel her shaking. The other children sat with their sponsors, small and nervous. Behind them, the human section was packed. Young-soo was there with her daughter Hana. Tai-min sat in the front row. Hyunwoo was there. At least 40 other humans filled the seats, showing silent support. The Torellian elder sat in the back, arms crossed, watching everything. Arbitrator Drex tapped his gavel. We are here to determine the legal status of 4 Ilari juveniles currently residing on this station under human sponsorship. Specifically, whether their registration as station residents is legitimate or whether they should be classified as unclaimed property available for legal acquisition. Unclaimed property, like furniture, like garbage. Daehyun's jaw clenched. Krell's lawyer stood up. His name was Vren and he was good at his job. Arbitrator Drex, this case is quite simple. The Ilari species lost their governmental recognition when their homeworlds were conquered 20 years ago. Without recognized government status, they cannot hold legal personhood under galactic law. These 4 juveniles are remnants of a defunct civilization. They have no legal standing. The humans' attempt to register them as dependents is fraudulent and should be nullified. These are children, Daehyun said loudly, standing up. They're not property. Drex banged his gavel. Order. The human will remain seated unless given permission to speak. Bora grabbed Daehyun's arm and pulled him down. Let me handle this, she whispered. She stood up formally. Arbitrator, I represent the human sponsors. May I present our case? Proceed. Bora stepped forward with her tablet. She had prepared for this moment. The argument that the Ilari lack personhood because they lack government is flawed. Many species on this station come from fractured or fallen civilizations. That doesn't make them property. It makes them refugees. Galactic law has provisions for refugees. Refugees require proof of citizenship from a recognized government, Vren countered. These juveniles have no such proof. They cannot even verify their family lineages. They are orphans with no documentation. For all we know, they could be artificially created or clones. They're not clones, Lirai shouted. She couldn't help herself. I remember my mother. I remember my home. Drex banged his gavel again. The juvenile will be silent. But something had shifted in the room. People were looking at Lirai now. Really looking at her. She wasn't sitting quietly like a pet or a piece of property. She was angry. She was defending herself. She was acting like a person. Bora saw the moment and seized it. Arbitrator, I request permission for the juveniles to testify. If this hearing is to determine their status as persons versus property, surely their own testimony is relevant. Vren laughed. Testimony from alleged property? That's absurd. Are we going to let cargo containers testify next? The humans in the audience stirred angrily. Someone muttered, bastard, loud enough to be heard. Drex held up one hand. The human makes a valid point. If personhood is the question, demonstration of sapience is relevant. I'll allow brief testimony from one juvenile. He looked at the children. The small blue one, approach. Lirai looked at Daehyun. He nodded encouragingly. She climbed down from his shoulder and walked to the center of the room. She looked so tiny standing there facing the massive arbitrator's desk. State your name, Drex said tiredly, like he was going through the motions. Lirai. Her voice was small but clear. Do you understand where you are? Yes. You decide if I am person or thing. Several people in the audience shifted uncomfortably. Put so simply, so directly, the question sounded barbaric. Do you have memories from before your arrival on this station? Drex asked. Yes. Many memories. Tell me one. Lyra was silent for a moment. Then she spoke. I remember the singing circles. On my home world, before the raid, all children sat in center. Adults sat around us in circles. 3 circles. First circle was parents. Second circle was teachers. Third circle was keepers of old memory. We learned songs together. I was learning the creation song, about how Ilari first came to be, how we were born from stars and memory and the need to remember important things. The room was completely silent now. Even Vren had stopped shuffling his papers. The song has 12,000 verses, Lyra continued. I learned first 3,000 before the raid came. I remember them still. I practice every night so I don't forget. Because if I forget, no one else remembers. And if no one remembers, my people die twice, once in body, once in memory. She looked directly at Krell. You want to make me property. Make me serve someone. Clean their floors. Fetch their things. But I am Lyra, daughter of scholars, keeper of memory. I remember creation song. I remember harvest song. I remember morning greeting and evening blessing. I remember my mother's voice teaching me. I remember my father's hands showing me how to make memory patterns in sand. I remember being loved, being precious, being someone. Tears were running down Lyra's face now. You took everything from us, home, family, safety, but you cannot take memories. And memories make me real, make me person, not thing. Never thing, she turned to Drex. I am person. I think, I feel. I remember. I love, I hope, I fear. Things do not do these. Only persons do. I am person. The silence in the room was profound. Even Drex looked uncomfortable now. Vren stood up quickly, trying to regain control. This is emotional manipulation. The juvenile has been coached by the humans to elicit sympathy. This doesn't change the legal reality. Coached? Daehyun stood up again, too angry to be silent. She's telling the truth. Everything she said is real. Sit down! Drex commanded. No. Daehyun stepped forward. You want proof they're people? I met Lyra 8 weeks ago. She was eating rotted fruit out of garbage. Workers were kicking her like a dog. Everyone treated her like vermin. But I saw her eyes. I saw intelligence, fear, hunger, hope. I saw a person. He gestured to the other Ilari children. We found 3 more just like her. All hiding. All alone. All starving. We gave them food, shelter, safety. And you know what happened? They thrived. They learned to read in 1 week. They speak 2 languages fluently now. They teach each other cultural traditions. They create art. They have feelings and opinions and personalities. He pointed at Krell. He wants to take them and sell them. Make them servants. But look at them. Really look at them. They're not property. They're children who lost everything and are trying to survive. They deserve protection, not enslavement. This is not about emotions, Vren said. This is about law. Then the law is wrong, Daehyun shouted. If the law says these children are property, then the law is broken and needs to be fixed. The human section erupted in applause. Drex banged his gavel repeatedly, trying to restore order. When the room finally quieted, Drex looked exhausted. I will make my ruling. Based on the evidence presented, I find that the juveniles demonstrate clear sapience. They possess memory, language capability, cultural knowledge, and self-awareness. Hope rose in Daehyun's chest. However, Drex continued, and that hope shattered. Individual sapience is not sufficient under current galactic law. The Ilari lack governmental recognition. They have no legal standing as a species. Without that, they cannot hold property, citizenship, or legal rights. The human registrations are therefore invalid. No. Youngsu stood up. You can't do this. My ruling is that the juveniles shall be classified as unclaimed salvage. They will be placed in station custody pending proper disposition. They're not salvage. Multiple humans shouted. Security officers moved forward, ready to take the children. Lyra ran back to Daehyun, climbing his leg frantically. The other children clung to their sponsors. Kira was crying. Tal was making frightened chirping sounds. Then a new voice rang out. I invoke sanctuary right. Everyone turned. Commander Jaewon stood in the doorway. As the human station commander, she held significant authority. She walked down the aisle slowly, deliberately. Sanctuary right? Drex said. That's an ancient human tradition. It has no legal standing here. It has standing if I say it does, Jaewon said coldly. I am the human representative on this station's leadership council, and I am invoking an old Earth tradition that says when the law fails to protect the vulnerable, those with power must step in and provide protection themselves. She stood beside Daehyun and the children. I declare the human sector of this station to be sanctuary territory. These children are under human protection. Anyone who attempts to take them by force will be considered an act of aggression against the human community. Krell stood up. This is outrageous. You can't just ignore arbitration rulings. Watch me, Jae-won said. You want these children? You'll have to go through every human on this station, all 200 of us. We'll make it a diplomatic incident. We'll contact Earth government. We'll make so much noise that this station's reputation will be destroyed. She looked at Drex. Or you could decide 3 months passed after the hearing. The station slowly adjusted to its new reality. 4 Ilari children living openly in the human sector, protected by sanctuary tradition and human stubbornness. The legal gray area they existed in was uncomfortable but functional. The children had no official rights, but they were recognized as residents of the human sector. They couldn't travel to other parts of the station without human escorts, but they were safe. And they were thriving. The human community had created a small school in one of the common rooms. Lire, Kira, Tal, and Saris attended every day, learning alongside Youngsu's daughter, Hana, and a few other human children. Bora taught them reading and writing. Hyunwoo taught them about plants and growing food. Taemin taught them basic mechanics and how things worked. The Ilari children absorbed everything. They were brilliant students, remembering lessons after hearing them once. Their cultural tradition of memory keeping made them natural scholars. But they also gave back. They taught the human children Ilari songs and art. They shared stories from their culture that stretched back thousands of years. They created beautiful memory patterns in colored sand that depicted historical events. The human children loved them.